This happened during spring break of my junior year of college. Me and my three closest friends, Kevin, Allie, and Seb, decided to go car camping in Colorado. We'd been doing these trips together since freshman year, but we were all pretty broke that semester, so we went with dispersed camping instead of paying for an actual campground. I found this spot on one of those camping apps that showed free sites. It was somewhere outside of Buena Vista, tucked back on this Forest Service road that seemed to go on forever. The four of us had done enough camping together that we knew what we were doing. We got there around late afternoon and found this clearing near what looked like it used to be a creek bed. It was completely dried up, but you could tell water had run through there at some point. The area was pretty isolated. We didn't see any other campers or even tire tracks from recent visitors. It was honestly perfect for the kind of vibe we were going for. We set up our tents in a loose cluster, maybe 15 feet apart from each other. Nothing fancy about the arrangement, just wherever the ground looked level and didn't have too many rocks. I don't even remember what we did that night. Probably just drank a few of the beers we brought while playing cards. We were all pretty tired from the drive, so we called it around 11 o'clock and went to our separate tents. I remember sleeping really heavily that night, which was weird for me to begin with, but especially during a camping trip usually. And this is when I'm sleeping on a comfortable bed in a climate-controlled room. I wake up multiple times from being cold or needing to pee or whatever else. Point is, I'm a very light sleeper, and during a camping trip, forget it. I'm used to waking up at least 3 times, but that night, I felt completely knocked out, like I'd taken a sleeping pill or something. When I woke up the next morning, something felt off immediately. I unzipped my tent to get some fresh air, and then I just froze. I noticed it immediately. All 4 of our tents had been moved, like not ruffled or roughed up by an animal. Actually moved. They were arranged in this perfect square formation around a pile of stones that definitely hadn't been there when we went to sleep. Part of me felt like I was still dreaming. That's how bizarre and borderline unbelievable the sight before me was. Each tent had been relocated maybe 20 or 30 feet from where we'd originally set them up. But that's not really what freaked me out. The stakes were still perfectly secured in the ground, and nothing inside any of the tents had been disturbed. My sleeping bag was exactly how I left it. My phone was still plugged into my portable charger, and all my other gear was in the same spot. Nothing was missing from my tent, which I checked, double-checked, and triple-checked. I thought I was going crazy. I yelled to wake up my friends. Kevin was the first one to emerge from his tent, and I didn't even have to explain the situation to him. I could see on his face that he was experiencing the same confusion I was. Allie and Seb crawled out a few seconds later, and as I watched them take a look around at the campsite, it was the exact same thing. None of us remembered anything, but then Allie mentioned that she'd had this really vivid dream about walking in a lion through some kind of desert landscape while someone counted her steps out loud. And then Kevin chimed in, saying he had a dream about being in the army, marching alongside his fellow soldiers. Seb didn't remember having a dream, and neither did I. But we found it odd that both Allie and Kevin had eerily similar dreams. The vibe between the 4 of us was really weird, but hard to describe. It was almost like we were reading each other's minds. It's kind of hard to express the feeling, but it really did feel like we were more connected than we had been the night before, but in a bad way. I remember looking back and forth between them, trying to figure out what it was that I was feeling around me. The best way I can think to describe the feeling is what it would have felt like if there was a 5th person watching all of us who was also part of all of us. We examined the campsite a little more carefully, looking for clues or anything that would help us piece together what happened. At first, Kevin suggested that maybe we had just gotten really drunk and forgot about what we did the night before. But this theory was shattered in about 5 seconds. We found these drag marks in the dirt leading from where each tent had originally been positioned to where they ended up. The weird thing was the drag marks stopped about 10 feet short of each tent's final location, like someone had dragged them part way and then lifted and carried them the rest of the distance. The pile of stones in the center was even stranger. There were exactly 4 stones, and they were balanced on top of each other like some kind of sculpture. It actually would have been pretty were it not for the circumstances. Kevin walked over to get a closer look, and as he was leaning in to examine the top stone, he tripped and ended up knocking the whole thing over. The stones just kind of tumbled to the ground. Nothing dramatic. For a second, the 4 of us just stood there in silence, staring at the scattered stones. And then things went from a 5 to a 10. At the exact same time, all 4 of us started hearing this low, rumbling sound coming from somewhere in the distance. It sounded like rocks grinding against each other. Not like an earthquake or anything. More like an old stone door being pushed open. Hearing that sound kind of sent us into a panic, and we all just started packing without even discussing things. Like I said before, it felt like we were reading each other's minds, and that also applied to our feelings. I could feel my friends' fear, and I knew they could feel mine. It was really freaky. 10 times freakier than it had been not 2 minutes ago. I don't think I've ever packed up a campsite so quickly in my life. Realistically, we were out of there in under 5 minutes, but it felt like an eternity in that moment. I'm not going to harp too much on what happened. I really don't like thinking about what happened that night, and I'm worried that if I think too much about it, it'll go from being a fever dream that sort of sits in the back of my mind to something more real. That was 5 years ago. Now the 4 of us don't really see each other anymore, but I guess that's kind of how it goes as everyone gets older. Kevin moved to Denver after graduation. Allie's in grad school in California, and I think Seb moved to Chicago with his girlfriend. We keep in touch, but we've never really talked about that night since. Double tap if your chest just tightened. Share this with someone who loves scary stories, and hit that follow button right now so you never miss another midnight nightmare.